Jung showed us that the path to healing begins with a simple, but profoundly difficult, step, learning to choose yourself in a world that constantly demands we look to others, adjust ourselves, seek approval, and meet expectations. We live in an endless race for recognition, love, and approval, but we rarely stop to ask ourselves, what do I want? What do I truly need to feel happy and whole? The answer to that question never lies in the external world, not in the boss's praise, parental approval, or a partner's admiration. It always lies within the quiet yet persistent part of ourselves that knows the truth, but which we so often silence out of fear of being inconvenient or different. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, as many believe. It's finally turning toward the most important person in your life, you. It's giving yourself the attention, care, and respect that you so easily give others, but so rarely reserve for yourself. Jung warned that most of our emotional wounds, anxieties, and disappointments spring from a single root, the rupture with our own essence. We spend years playing roles, the model employee, the accommodating partner, the perfect parent, until one day we realize we've forgotten who we truly are. We become strangers to ourselves, and inside, emptiness takes root. We try to fill it with work, relationships, shopping, social media, but nothing helps because the problem isn't a lack of external things. It's a loss of the internal. Everything we suppress, deny ourselves, or hide, even from ourselves, never disappears. It becomes a shadow, which eventually manifests as recurring patterns in our relationships, self-destructive habits, sudden crises, or an inner void that remains even when life appears fine. You might ask yourself for years, why does my life stay the same? Why do I repeat the same mistakes? Why am I surrounded by people who don't value me? The answer is always the same. The problem isn't outside. It's inside, and until you start listening to yourself, your outside world will reflect your inner state. If there's chaos within, chaos will reign without. Healing doesn't begin when you find the right partner, ideal job, or new social circle. It begins when you stop seeking salvation outside and finally dare to look within. Imagine your life as a mirror of your inner world. If you're constantly surrounded by people who don't appreciate you, if your energy drains in toxic relationships or meaningless tasks, if you keep ending up in situations where you're used, devalued, or ignored, it's not a coincidence. It's your subconscious screaming, "Stop, something is wrong." The only question is, are you ready to listen? Many people prefer to ignore these signals because confronting yourself is perhaps the hardest thing you can do, admitting your wounds, fears, and mistakes. Acknowledging that you allowed the pain to continue for years demands incredible courage. Yet it's in that point of awareness that true transformation begins. You can't heal by feeding the wound. You can't remove anxiety if you replay catastrophe scenarios in your mind daily. You can't fill yourself by surrounding yourself with people who drain you. You can't gain confidence by waiting for external validation. Jung spoke of individuation, a process in which you free yourself from external expectations and return to yourself. It doesn't mean abandoning the world or living in isolation. It means stopping the expectation that others must tell you who to be, what to do, and how to live. Remember how often you suppressed your desires out of fear of judgment. How often you said yes when your heart screamed no. How often you ignored your intuition just to be agreeable. When you begin choosing yourself, something remarkable happens. You activate a higher law of attraction. You no longer settle for emotional scraps. You don't wait for someone to fill your void, and you stop fitting into someone else's mold. You realize that your value lies not in pleasing others, but in being yourself, and then the world around you slowly transforms. Relationships that used to drain you lose their power. Situations that used to overwhelm no longer feel like disasters, not because the world changed, but because you changed. But this path isn't about instant transformation. It demands courage to say no to what destroys you, even if it hurts someone else, patience to rediscover your true desires beneath layers of external conditioning, and honesty, particularly with yourself. Jung reminded us, the cost of ignoring yourself is too high. We pay it in anxiety, exhaustion, a sense of being lost, a life that feels like it belongs to someone else. When you choose yourself, something extraordinary happens. A world that seemed hostile suddenly softens. Conflicts that used to drag you down lose their power because you stop fighting yourself. Healing is not a destination, it's a daily choice. Choosing your peace over someone else's approval, choosing truth over convenient falsehood, choosing yourself even when it's scary. The calm, the confidence you once sought outside, you always had them within. You just needed permission to feel them. Are you ready to take that first step? Because the path to yourself is the only one truly worth walking. If we keep avoiding our wounds, the world will reflect them back, like echoes in an empty room, until we finally decide to turn and meet them face to face. This journey is hard. It demands confronting shadow parts, realizing that what we called love was often dependence, that behind friendly masks there were mutual benefits, and that many of our decisions were driven by fear of not being enough. But when you choose yourself, a breakthrough occurs. You stop bargaining with your conscience, making excuses for what devours you, and appeasing what doesn't deserve it. Then the most terrifying thing happens. People leave, not because you've changed, but because your boundaries have. Those who once seemed indispensable dissolve into the past, sometimes without explanation. What once looked like painful loss turns into freedom, because every closed door makes room for something real. This shift is never easy. Our subconscious clings to familiar, even when it's toxic. Like someone in a storm drowning, holds on to debris. We endure toxic relationships, humiliating jobs, and draining friendships because the fear of the unknown grips harder than the known pain. But at the moment of choice, stay in familiar hell or step into uncertainty, true transformation is born. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting or pretending nothing happened. It means accepting that you can't make another person value you, and that your happiness doesn't depend on someone unwilling to share it. The only one truly responsible for your well-being is you. In that moment, the world divides into two, those who continue looking outside for what they lost inside, and those who find courage to start the journey within. Jung called healing the road to wholeness, the only path truly worth walking. When you choose yourself, something miraculous happens. Relationships begin to be filtered by life itself. People accustomed to your constant giving quietly vanish. In their place come those who see the real you, not because you changed, but because you stopped settling for half measures. In such relationships, there's no martyrdom, only mutual enrichment. Most never reach this point, and the reason is simple: meeting the shadow hurts. It's not just about losing others, it's about facing the part of ourselves that allowed mistreatment. It's easier to blame a partner, boss, or fate than to admit everything happening to us is a reflection of our inner permissions. Jung warned the suppressed parts of our psyche don't disappear. They turn into a shadow puppeteer that controls us through inexplicable fears, sudden breakdowns, compulsive patterns. But when you begin choosing yourself, the shadow gradually emerges. You notice how you sabotage your own happiness, saying yes when you mean no, tolerating what you long abandoned, bleeding yourself dry in unfulfilling relationships. Then you face a choice: live on autopilot or seize the helm of your life. The first path suits some. It lets them complain about unfair life or unkind people. The second demands brutal honesty. Admit how often you betrayed yourself, gave precious time to those undeserving, accepted scraps when you deserve a feast. But in this truth lies liberation. The pain of conscious awakening is temporary, nothing compared to the lifelong pain of self-deception. As Jung said, we cannot heal what we refuse to see. But the moment you meet your authentic self, without masks or excuses, something clicks. You realize life isn't a lottery, it's a mirror. Every yes and no shapes reality. You no longer need external permission to be yourself. Then the most amazing thing happens. You no longer fit into old dramas. Anxiety about the future gives way to quiet trust. A new lightness fills your chest, something money can't buy or force to survive. This is true freedom, the moment you finally realize, everything I need is already inside me. I just needed to let myself feel it. Are you ready to make that journey all the way through? To dare to let go of what drags you down and open to the possibility of real life. It won't be easy, but let me tell you, it's absolutely worth it. Because when you start choosing yourself, everything changes. Emotional healing stops being an unreachable goal. It becomes a natural process. The world that once seemed hostile now reflects your inner peace. But be ready, as soon as you begin changing, your surroundings will react. some will rejoice, others will ask uncomfortable questions. And a third group, those who benefited from your previous convenient self, will pressure, guilt, and remind you you were different before. That will be the hardest test, because you'll realize not everyone can accept your transformation. Many give up at this point and return to old habits, relationships that suffocate them, or a life that diminishes them, out of fear of losing the familiar, even if the familiar is poison. Here's the truth: if you have to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's life, then it was never your place. Jung called this process individuation, becoming who you really are. And he warned, your path won't be understood by everyone. What matters is not their opinion, but your willingness to move forward, even if for a time you have to walk alone. The fear of solitude is the main trap on the path of growth. We're taught being alone means being insufficient, unloved, a loser. But the real issue isn't loneliness, it's not knowing how to be with yourself. Jung said that the path to wholeness requires a period of deep inward immersion, when we stop seeking outside what can only be found within. Once you learn to be comfortable in your own presence, you stop consenting to anything just to avoid silence. Then many experience what Jung called the dark night of the soul, a time when the old collapses and the new hasn't yet formed. A void, uncertainty, like ground slipping away. It's precisely here that most falter, because the mind demands immediate answers. But real transformation happens in that liminal space, when instead of filling the void with old schemes, you allow yourself to just be in it. And then clarity comes. You realize much of your identity was built around others. Your value hung on being needed, accepted, approved. When those external supports vanish, the key question arises. Who am I when no one is watching? The answer isn't in what you show the world, it's in the parts hidden even from you, shadows, wounds, suppressed desires, unrecognized talents. When you stop running from yourself and honestly face your inner mirror, a miracle occurs. The need to please fades, the fear of rejection disappears, and for the first time in your life you feel true freedom. But the world will test you. Past situations will return to see if you've really changed. People who once manipulated you will try again. And that's when you realize the change is real, not because the world changed, but because your response is now different. You don't need to defend yourself or prove your worth anymore. You understand not all connections are forever, and losing some isn't tragedy, but soul optimization. Energy once spent proving your worth becomes energy for yourself. Though at first this feels odd, this is the highest form of self-love. When you choose yourself, you begin to notice the patterns you once ignored. Life. At some point, life stops seeming like a series of random events. It becomes a mirror of your inner world. Everything that surrounds you, everything that triggers you in others, is a reflection of what lives within you. As Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. What you hate in others exists in you. What you admire in others lives in you. That is both your shadow and your light. And when you accept this, healing becomes inevitable. You no longer fear solitude, because you've realized that the most important journey is the journey to yourself. And no matter what challenges life brings, you understand now. They don't happen to you, they happen for you. Every lesson, every loss, every encounter leads you to a deeper understanding of who you truly are. And in that knowledge lies your real strength. If you keep attracting relationships where you feel undervalued, if you constantly find yourself exhausting your energy just to get someone's attention, stop and ask yourself, what part of me still believes that I'm not enough? The answer never lies in the external world. It hides in your deeply rooted beliefs about yourself. When you begin this inner work, something extraordinary happens. Life stops looking like an endless obstacle course. The anxiety about the future dissolves, because you finally find stability with it. Relationships stop being battlegrounds, they become spaces for growth. And most importantly, you reclaim power over your own life. This doesn't mean everything suddenly becomes perfect. Fear and doubt won't disappear. But now you have tools. You don't let them control you. You stop acting from lack. Your actions come from a place of inner fullness. You don't desperately search for love because you understand. It was always inside you. Jung taught. The point is not to avoid pain, but to learn how to integrate it into your story. True healing is not about escaping wounds, it's about transforming them into wisdom. When you accept this, you stop living in past resentments and future fears. The only reality that starts to matter is the present. That's where peace is born. Not because the problems disappear, but because you gain unshakable confidence that, no matter what happens, you will handle it. Your worth no longer depends on other people's approval. It rests on a simple truth. You are already enough. And that is the greatest gift, choosing yourself. You reclaim not just time and energy, but something even more precious. The right to be real. When you choose this path, you realize most of your suffering wasn't caused by external circumstances, but by the stories you told yourself for years. Stories like, to be loved, I must earn it through constant effort. To be accepted, I must change myself. My value comes only from proving my usefulness. But the moment you begin to question those beliefs, the picture starts to clear. You were never meant to carry what isn't yours. Jung explained. The collective unconscious is filled with inherited patterns, unchecked ideas about love, success, duty, sacrifice. We absorb them in childhood unaware, and live out someone else's script thinking it's our own. Awakening begins with uncomfortable questions. Why do I believe what I believe? Why do I tolerate what hurts me? Whose rules am I really following? Maybe you grew up watching your parents sacrifice themselves for others, getting nothing in return, and now subconsciously believe that love must be painful. Maybe you were taught that rest is shameful weakness, and now can't relax without guilt. Maybe you were told that strong people endure everything, so now you can't let go, even of clearly toxic situations. But here's a liberating truth. You are not required to repeat these patterns forever. Jung insisted. Fate is not preordained, it is the result of consciousness. When you expand awareness, your reality changes. By choosing yourself, you discover. Love doesn't have to be a struggle. Peace is not a luxury. Your worth needs no proof, it is a fact of your existence. And then transformation happens. The people who used to manipulate you lose their power. Situations that used to shake your foundation no longer have the same grip. The world hasn't changed, your perception has. You stop seeking validation from those who never tried to understand you. You stop breaking yourself to fit places where you're not welcome. You stop rescuing what belongs to the past. That is true freedom. Not recklessness, but inner independence. The ability to be alone without feeling empty. The certainty that, whatever life throws your way, you will face it, grounded in your whole authentic self, no longer needing the crutch of someone else's approval. Your journey back to yourself is the only path where the destination matters more than the speed. Each step is a reunion with who you were, who you are, and who you can become. And no matter how hard the road feels, it's the only one that leads to you, your real self. No masks. No conditions. Nothing to prove. Simply enough. Enough to stop chasing salvation and start living. You will always be okay, because you finally learned how to be yourself. Jung said that individuation is the most important process of our existence, the journey toward wholeness. And though that path often includes pain, loss, and solitude, it's the only one that can lead to a meaningful life. When you begin choosing yourself, when you let go of the old versions of you built to please others, life rewards you in unexpected ways. New people arrive, new opportunities open, but most importantly, you find a peace you've never known, because you stop fighting yourself, and stop looking outside for what has always lived within. At that moment, many feel like they've finally woken up. Life stops being survival or performance. It becomes a space for real experience, creativity, and feeling. But the work doesn't end there. Consciousness is like a muscle, it needs constant training. Because society, family, and environment will try to pull you back. They'll make you doubt yourself. They'll say choosing yourself is selfish. But the difference now is, you know the truth. Nothing is more valuable than your peace. Nothing more important than your well-being. In the end, the only decisions that matter are the ones that bring you closer to yourself. The world changes when you change. Relationships improve when you improve your relationship with yourself. Opportunities arise when you stop acting from lack and start acting from fullness. Jung said, "The unconscious responds to our core beliefs. When you truly believe you deserve more, the universe reflects that back to you." The question is, are you ready to see it? Are you ready to let go of what no longer resonates and open yourself to something entirely new? It won't be easy, but I promise it will be worth it. When you start living from your authenticity, something amazing happens. What once felt confusing becomes clear. Relationships that drained you now feel unbearable. Situations you used to tolerate now feel heavy. That's not coincidence, that's growth. It's a sign that you're evolving and can no longer ignore what your soul has whispered for years. Jung taught that consciousness is not static. It expands when we dare to look inward. And when that happens, the world cannot stay the same, because the outer reflects the inner. If there's clarity within, you'll see it outside. If there's chaos inside, you'll keep encountering it in the world. When you choose yourself, you start attracting experiences aligned with your new energy. You no longer force connections, beg for love, or prove your worth. Everything flows naturally, because you're acting not from lack, but from wholeness. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. There will be moments of doubt. You'll be tempted to go back. Loneliness may feel unbearable, but that's the test. Will you betray yourself out of fear of being alone? Or will you stand firm in your truth until what's truly meant for you arrives? The unconscious always tests us, not to punish, but to help us prove to ourselves that we're ready for the next level. That's why, once you choose yourself, people from the past may reappear. Old dynamics may resurface, not because you're backsliding, but so you can confirm. This time, I choose differently. And when you do, your energy shifts profoundly. You are no longer ruled by fear. You're no longer attached to needing approval. You stop waiting for others to validate your path. And the world responds in surprising ways. Opportunities come effortlessly. People enter your life with genuine respect and interest. What once seemed out of reach becomes real, not because the world changed, but because you finally believe you're worthy. Many feel like they've finally woken up. All the pain of the past begins to make sense. It led you here. Though suffering is never easy, looking back you see, every failure, every loss, every rejection was a disguised release. Jung reminded us, the unconscious never forgets, but it can heal. Wounds don't disappear, but we change how we relate to them. They stop being chains and become reminders of the path we've walked. When you stop seeing your story as a string of failures and begin to see it as evolution, everything changes. The problem is, most never reach this point. They stay stuck in resentment, nostalgia, guilt, looking back, wishing things had been different. But real power doesn't lie in what could have been. It lies in what you can build now. When you choose yourself, you stop living in the past. You no longer need to justify what happened or mourn what was lost. You simply accept. It all unfolded as it was meant to, and every experience prepared you for who you are now. And that's when life becomes truly exciting. When you let go of the weight of the past, you realize the future is entirely in your hands. There's no fixed fate, only infinite possibility. The only question is, what will you do with this freedom? Will you keep repeating the same old stories, or dare to write a new one? Most choose what's familiar. They prefer the comfort of familiar suffering over the risk of being truly happy. But those who dare to live from their truth discover that life has far more to offer than they ever imagined. When you choose yourself, life chooses you. When you value yourself, life responds in kind. When you release what no longer serves, what's truly yours finds a way to you. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's a natural law of energy, the reflection of your growth, the inevitable result of the most important decision, to be true to yourself. And when you finally choose yourself, life changes direction. You no longer cling to pain. You no longer try to force others to value you. You no longer live in fear of not being enough. Because deep down you know, you are already whole. You no longer search outside for what has always lived within. But that doesn't mean the road is easy. There will be days of doubt. Old wounds will try to drown out your new voice. The familiar will tempt you back. But now you know the truth. Your peace is priceless. Your well-being is non-negotiable. Your worth is not up for debate. And that changes everything. Jung taught, the goal of life is not superficial happiness, but wholeness. And it can only be reached when you dare to be yourself, without masks, without fear, without chasing approval. To live authentically, to accept both your light and shadow, to understand that every experience, no matter how painful, was leading you to this moment. And when you arrive here, you no longer need approval. You seek genuine connection. You don't want to fit in. You want to belong, in a space where you can be your true self. And that's when the real magic happens. When you live from your truth, you attract people and opportunities that truly resonate with your soul. If these words spoke to you, if at any point they felt like they were speaking directly to your heart, know this. This knowledge is not just for you. The world is full of people stuck in painful patterns, looking outside for what can only be found within. You are not alone on this path. Every word you speak can be a light for someone just beginning to wake up. Every choice you make, proof that living authentically is possible. Because when you choose yourself, emotional healing flows without resistance, and your life becomes a reflection of your truth. Keep choosing yourself, again and again.